Hello, welcome to an emergency Jack and Jack show. Jack Stroudley uh, alongside me. How are you?
I am much better after the news that we heard yesterday that we're going to go into. Yeah, definitely in need of posting something frantically about this. Obviously, Joe's had some at work, so I've been called upon as a substitute to help talk about this fantastic news that we've just had.
We're of course sponsored by Green King Sport. Thank you so much for the sponsorship this season. I too am at work, but I'm lucky to say that this is my work. So it's absolutely unbelievable stuff that happened last night, 6 o'clock. I was walking home, and suddenly the news flashed up. Joao Palhinha and Harrison Reed have signed new contracts. This is scenes. What were your initial thoughts? It's a contract that keeps him at the club until 2028 with an option for a further year, even though 2 weeks ago he was in Munich uh, on his way out of the club, it seemed. But it's a strange situation, isn't it, when a player's that close to leaving comes back. We all think things are going to be really rock the boat, and suddenly puts pen to paper.
Yeah, it's really weird. I mean, I was out on a walk trying to make the most of the last of the summer weather, and I checked my phone, and everyone, including yourself, had just completely lost their heads. And I was like, "Hang on, what is going on?" So I went onto Twitter to obviously see the news, and it's just absolutely fantastic. I mean, initial thoughts will start with Joao Palhinha. My initial thought was, well, that's just to add a release clause, but Sky reported yesterday that there is no release clause in the contract. So what that effectively means is that he's now just becoming one of, if not our highest earned player. And then, the additional years on his contract means that if/when we do sell Palhinha, we should be able to, command a fee even bigger than the one that Bayern Munich had accepted a few weeks ago.
It's one of those bits of news that sort of came out of absolutely nowhere. There was rumblings. In fact, Marco Silva said it a couple of weeks ago that Harrison Reed was in talks for a new contract amid sort of speculation linking him to Everton and Wolves. So I was expecting maybe a Harrison Reed contract, and of course that came to fruition as well. Harrison Reed signing a deal which keeps him at the club until 2027. And this is a player who, of course, is like the most underrated Fulham player in the squad. He goes under the radar, does his job well, but his role in the last couple of years under Silva has been to push forward much more, get on the wide areas and chip in with goals and assists. And I'm delighted with Harrison Reed staying because it's another midfielder that we need to tie down because our midfield is very short if you look at the 25-man squad list. But Jack, fantastic news, Harrison Reed.
Yeah, I think Reed, it's kind of gone a little bit unnoticed because of all the Palhinha news, how important it is to get Reed tied down on a long-term deal. He's one of my favourite Fulham players, and he's so influential to the way we play, and he just seems to improve season on season. I think he's a future Fulham captain, to be perfectly honest with you. I think he's that good and that influential to the side. I think he's one of those players that if he was playing for a quote-unquote bigger club and doing the work that he does, there'd be more murmurings about him, with a potential England call-up. I think he's that good of a player. So I'm very glad that we've been able to tie Reed down as well as, Joao Palhinha. I just wanted to ask you a question. I think I spoke about it a little bit last night, but do you think that Palhinha signing this deal, I'm speaking this completely into existence, is maybe an indicator that, Marco's had a word with him and Marco might be staying put himself?
Ooh, I'd like to think so. I think Marco Silva. The thing is, you never know now with this club. You look at Marco Silva, his contract's running down. We're all getting worried. We're all getting worried about Palhinha a couple of weeks ago. And then out of nowhere, boom, a contract. It wouldn't surprise me if Marco's sort of sorted out a contract and maybe signs before the end of the season. It felt a few weeks ago, if you'd asked me the same question, that Marco is basically running out his contract while his stock's still high, keeping Fulham hopefully in the Premier League, and then sort of will be touted for a new Premier League job when there is one available, which I'm sure there will be, come May 24. But now it seems as though with Palhinha, does this mean he's still going in January? Fabrizio Romano has already tweeted that Bayern Munich haven't ended their pursuit in him. Like this whole, I will say, like this whole thing about Fabrizio Romano, he went on a podcast the other day and said, I never try and unsettle a club or a player. You're literally doing that by tweeting this. This isn't what you do is you tweet about transfers within a transfer window. As soon as the window closes, we shouldn't really be hearing from you. I'm not going to lie. And then he just tweets, merely 12, 14, 16 hours after he signs a new deal. Oh, but yeah, Bayern Munich is still in for him. Just let us enjoy the moment. Just let us celebrate and don't have us sort of going, oh, this is great news. Oh, but Fabrizio's tweeted, therefore we're not really allowed to be happy about this whatsoever. It grinds my gears, Jack. But to answer your question, I think that Marco's probably got an apology from the board about how the window went, and maybe we're trying to make up for that by sort of tying down key players in our squad, and maybe therefore convincing Marco that this is a project worth signing on for, and hopefully, I don't know what you think, but do you think that Marco Silva will then follow suit and sign a contract and sort of keep this journey going?
I sure hope so. I think, it's very dependent upon, what the board have said to him. They've clearly given him a little bit of confidence by saying we're going to keep, we're going to tie Palhinha down, we're going to tie Hassan Reed down. Kenny Tete is another one who's, I believe, in his final year, who needs to be tied down as well. So hopefully we can get that kind of done. I imagine Marco is probably at the moment not wanting to put all of his eggs into one basket. See kind of how the season goes. I know we've just finished the window. See how January goes and see if, the board are true to their word before signing a deal, because he's in no rush at the moment. As you said, his stock is very high. He doesn't need to rush into a different managerial job. So I think if he can keep Fulham in the Premier League and have a successful season, whether he stays or goes after that, he's in a very good position to be managing a Premier League club.
Just finally, do you want to talk about that interview he did with FFC TV and what he said and sort of how he came across? Because he put on Instagram this morning a picture of him and I think his brother or agent posing with the new contract. And I'm thinking, this is so bizarre because 2 weeks ago, less than 2 weeks ago, it was his brother, his agent, that was kicking up a fuss that the deal didn't go through and the dream was only postponed, not cancelled, to his move to Bayern Munich. And there he is posing in the room, with Joao Palhinha signing a new contract. It's just like the turn of events is so bizarre, and it's why football's such a funny game, and maybe as to why, Joao basically said in the interview you shouldn't basically believe everything you see or read. Some things are true, some things are not true. But the fact of the matter is, his agent did put out, subsequently deleted it, but did put out some sort of communication about the whole thing. And maybe that's undermined Joao Palhinha slightly.
Yeah, I suppose if you're going to look at it from a cynical point of view, I guess it just goes back, money talks. And I think Palhinha now, as I've mentioned, he's either going to be the highest earning or one of the highest earning players at Fulham and on a contract that he probably deserves wage-wise. In terms of the interview, he came across very well. Same with what he posted on Instagram, where he was very transparent about everything and said, the opportunity basically was available. I wanted the move, but it didn't happen for one reason or the other. That doesn't take away from what I've got here at Fulham. And while I'm here, I'm going to give 100% because the club and the fans deserve it. And he basically said, who knows what is going to happen in the future, which I think you can't really ask for. If you've got a player as good as Palhinha on your books, I don't think you can really ask for much more than that. As long as he gives 100% every game, he doesn't kick up a fuss. And, if the time does come where he sells, Fulham get a good fee for him, then I think you can't really ask for much more than that.
So would you say your faith is back in Joao Palhinha after a couple of weeks where we weren't very sure where his head was at? Do you now go into that game tomorrow thinking, I am fully on board the Fulham train and the Joao Palhinha train, basically?
To be honest with you, I'd never got off the Palhinha train. I was firmly on. He doesn't strike me. To be fair, Mitrovic didn't either, but Palhinha doesn't strike me as the kind of person who is going to mope around with an attitude and refused to play for the club and all of this sort of stuff. He seems to be enjoying his time in London. He's now got a contract which, is evaluated around what he should be being paid as well. So, I have full faith that Palhinha is going to, give his all till at least January, at least next summer. The thing with Romano said that they're looking to push a deal for 2024. That doesn't necessarily mean January. It could mean next summer, and it's a deal that's being pushed hard by Thomas Tuchel, a manager who, has come under a little bit of uncertainty at Bayern Munich since he's been there. And, Harry Kane aside, Bayern Munich's business model tends to be buying, younger players. So, maybe they'll look at Palhinha, who, in another 6 months to a year's time is going to be, he's nearing kind of 30. Will they look at, maybe trying to get a younger, cheaper alternative who's going to be able to, build with them? Hope so.
Just finally, I sort of wonder what's gone on in the last couple of weeks. It's not because basically what's happened is Palhinha has gone to Munich. He's then gone back to London, didn't go to Manchester, then went straight to Portugal for internationals. So when was that conversation coming about during that international break? When was that new contract conversation starting to rumble? And then he obviously comes back to Motspur Park, midweek last week after the internationals, and Thursday signs a contract. It's weird how these things happen and how quickly things turn around from being doom and gloom. Jack, I think that's that. Anything more to say ahead of the game tomorrow?
Yeah, I'm looking forward to the game tomorrow. I think it's a game that comes at a right time for Fulham. There's been a couple of negative weeks, as you've mentioned. The signing, the contract renewals of Palhinha and Reed. If we were to top that off with 3 points against Luton, which we need, I think that'd be a very good week. And I think the next run of games, Fulham fans would have looked at those fixtures as we can get a good bulk of points. Luton, Palace. I say ignore Chelsea. They've not started very well. Sheffield United as well. That's a good run of games where we could pick up some points. So I'm pretty confident that Fulham are going to win on Saturday.
What we shall see. It's actually, I said on the Jack and Joe the other day that I wasn't going to the game after a meeting at work yesterday. It's been switched around. I am now going to the game. So I'm looking forward to seeing the game tomorrow, seeing the reception for Joao Palhinha. And looking forward to, I'm guessing Marco Silva's going to speak to the press in the next few hours. I'll be looking forward to seeing what he says in the press conference regarding, because I suppose all the questions will be regarding Joao Palhinha. Obviously, we'll see a bit of team news as well. So, Jack, thanks so much for being here. And I suppose come on Fulham as well.